Well, hello, I think it is time you make the perfect Sunday pot roast, and that's what this is. It's my mom's, it's my grandma's, it's simple, and it's what you want. It is what we would come home to a lot of times after church and have a pot roast in the oven. It has a beautiful chuck roast, which is the cut you want to use. It has potatoes, it has carrots that are homegrown in the garden, may I add, and it has a quick little kind of base flavor that we add, and that's what we're gonna get started with. So I have some butter melting in my Dutch oven that I'm gonna put the whole thing into, and I have some celery here and some onion, and I'm gonna put a little bit of carrot. So this is really that beginning of just a good layer of flavor, and that's what we want. And so what I'm doing is chopping this up pretty finely. You can see my celery and my onion are very fine because we're gonna cook them in the butter, and we want them to really just kind of melt in to the underlying flavor components that we're putting underneath this whole roast. This is kind of the base flavors that really you don't notice when it's all done, other than everything just has really good flavor, and that's what you're gonna notice. So we're not gonna do an overabundance, but what we are doing is making sure to take a little bit more time when we're chopping, as you can see, to make a nice kind of fine dice. Now, I am using my homegrown carrots. Now, I scrub them, I grow them organically, and no, I don't peel them because I think that's a waste of good carrot. Once they're cooked, you don't even know it. I just make sure that they're clean and they're ready to go. They stay in the fridge for a long time, so I'm always using them up, usually this time of year, and I love them. So we have all that chopped up, and this is gonna be our big kind of impact in the beginning. So this is the most work this takes, is actually taking these vegetables and cooking them here in the butter. This is like the beginning of the work, and then that's all there is. Because once you get this going, it's kind of just layering everything else on top. So I'm putting those in there. I'm gonna add a little bit here just to make sure I can stir them in, get them kind of all sauteing. We don't wanna add too much color, but we do really wanna cook them down and soften them before we do a lot of other work. So I'm gonna let these cook and we'll go to the meat. While those vegetables are really cooking down and just kind of slowly sauteing, we wanna make sure we talk about the meat here. So we're using a chuck cut, which is a shoulder cut of the beef, which means it has a lot of good marbling, it has a lot of good flavor, and it's a great one for a slow, long roast, which is what we're gonna do. That's gonna really break it down and get it tender and just melt in your mouth, which is what a pot roast should be. So we're gonna make sure to add a good amount of salt. And that's because meat needs salt. That's what actually flavors the meat. This is your one chance to make sure you get that on there. And I'm using kosher salt, which is a little bit bigger, granulars. So that's why you see an amount that looks a little bit more than some. Now, it looks fancy. The reason people go up high when you salt something is because you get it a little bit more even as you're going. Now I'm using one hand, you can see, to touch the raw meat, and one hand is for the salt. So I'm making sure to get in all the crevices, and I like to do this a few minutes before I'm gonna put it in the pan so it can get a little tacky and actually start absorbing. And this is why we didn't put a lot of salt in the vegetables, because it's gonna come from the meat as we're actually roasting it. So I'm washing my hands in soapy water. I'm gonna finish by just putting a little bit more pepper on this side that I didn't get. And then we're gonna talk over here about these vegetables that are really kind of sweating down. They're just beginning to get a little bit of color on them, which you can see here. And now what I wanna do, they've really picked up the color of the butter, which is what I love. The butter adds a ton of flavor. And now what I wanna do is add some tomato paste. So tomato paste, anytime we use it in a recipe like this, what it adds is a depth of flavor. It adds kind of that intense underlying, almost sweetness that really kind of caramelizes and picks up a lot of the good flavors. So we're gonna work that into the bottom here, and we're gonna let that kind of cook and coat the bottom of this Dutch oven. And that means it's really going to cook off the tomato raw flavor and give it a deeper depth of flavor. So I'm gonna let this go a couple minutes here until it gets a nice fond on the bottom. So if you come in here and you're not used to what a fond is, it is just what sticks to the bottom of the pan. So see that nice browning that's occurring? That's the fond, and that's flavor that you're getting from that tomato paste and these vegetables. So we can tell now that it's really kind of coating the bottom, which is what I want. And now we can add in our components to begin this pot roast. So it's gonna start with some beef broth. We're just gonna make sure we stir it up and get it all in there. So beef broth is gonna really condense in flavor and help add a richness. It's kind of gonna create just a sort of sauce underneath. And then a little bit of red wine. Now you could leave the red wine out if you're not a wine drinker. I don't think it adds a huge wine flavor, but what again it does add is a great layer of flavor that really kind of complements the beef and brings out so many of these other flavors. And then to me, the one kind of secret component that we all have in our cabinet, some Worcestershire sauce. It adds, it has on its own such a great complex flavor. And it has a great salty, funky taste that balances all these other strong flavors out. Already, the smell is amazing. And it's because all these are gonna be working together. So we're gonna add in our beef. We have it ready. We're adding it right in here to this nice liquid. And how I'm gonna start by doing this is nestling it right in there. And now you're gonna say, wait, pot roast means you have carrots and potatoes with it. Yeah, we're going to, but I don't want them to overcook. I don't want them to get mushy and gross. So we're gonna start by just cooking our pot roast for a while, getting it going. Then we'll add in the carrots and potatoes so it all comes out the perfect, tender, finished product that you want. After this has been cooking a while, it takes about an hour per pound to roast. In the last hour, I like to put in the vegetables. I don't like them to overcook and get too done, because that to me is gross. But look at this beautiful, this is what I love. Look at how this roast is just really, it's roasting obviously, but it's also just cooking those wonderful juices with those vegetables we put in there. Now, I do like to reserve just a little bit of the sauce underneath, and you're gonna see why. It kind of helps us a little later. We're gonna thicken it just slightly. And so it's just saving a little bit of that, helps make a slurry. So what I'm gonna do now is add in, I have all my carrots chopped up. So I have it's colored carrots because it's what I have left over from the garden. So I have some Amarillo, I have just some traditional, kind of with the orange, and I love to put them all around. Cooked carrots were one of my mom's favorite things, still are, and they're one of my favorite things because of that. And then I love to use these small potatoes if I can find them. They cook kind of quickly, which is nice, but they also are just a nice way to serve. They're kind of already portioned out, which is nice. You don't have to chop them up, you just have to clean them. Does this not look good? It to me just looks like that perfect way. Look at that. What a beautiful meal. Whether you're coming home on a Sunday to it, whether you're coming home on a Saturday evening to it, whenever you're doing it, it's that perfect meal. So I'm gonna cover this back up. I'm gonna put it back in the oven. I'm gonna kind of let it finish roasting now. And then we're gonna have a beautiful roast to enjoy together. In the last 30 minutes, I took off the lid just so it could kind of condense a little bit, but look at the beauty here. It's just beautiful. You got that roast in the middle. So what we're gonna do is we want the sauce to thicken just ever so slightly. The meat got a little bit of a crust on it, which I wanted. I'm gonna take out all these vegetables, and what we wanna do is just ever so slightly, not majorly, but just ever so gently thicken the sauce a little bit. Not to make it gloppy, but just to give it a little bit of body, because the thing is, the sauce, while it's good, it has a ton of flavor in it, it doesn't have the best ability to actually be like a gravy or a sauce. So we want to just make sure by taking out all these vegetables, look at, by the way, this beautiful meal that we are creating here. Whether you're having, I think pot roast, what's great about it is, it's an extremely humble, rustic meal, but does it not present beautifully and look like just the best meal to give friends, to give family, loved ones? Because look at all of the just wholesome goodness. I'm taking some cornstarch and putting it in that reserved liquid or kind of juice and sauce we pulled out when we put the vegetables in. Cornstarch always needs to be stirred in and whisked into something that's cool, not hot, because when it's hot, it can actually cause it to clump. So this sauce is still hot, but we're gonna put it on the stove here, and we're just gonna bring it back up to a simmer, which will just take a matter of seconds here because it was already hot. And what we're gonna do is take this whisked slurry, which is just cornstarch in a liquid when you put them together. And we're going to actually take it over to this. And as this comes up to a simmer and a boil, which you can see, look at how it's condensed somewhat, and that's wonderful. There's not a ton of liquid, but there's enough to create kind of a nice sauce-like gravy, and it has so much flavor in it. So as you can see, it's starting to wanna simmer and shimmer, which means it's coming up to a boil. So we're gonna put this slurry right back in here, and we're gonna stir it around before it's at too hard of a boil. And this is just gonna give it a little bit of body, but what cornstarch needs is to be fully activated, it needs to all come back up to a simmer throughout. So I'm gonna stir this until it just begins to simmer. It will thicken just gently, and we're gonna pull it off, and we can eat. I pulled the gravy off because you can see I can draw a spoon through it, and it keeps but falls back. So it's not too thick, it just has that nice kind of body and glistening ability. Look at just, it's beautiful. So I pulled the roast out over here, and it is, to me, it is just like melt in your mouth perfect. The knife is hardly even needed. Look how beautiful that is. I love how it just simply falls apart. I let it sit for, you know, meat should always rest for whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It's really best to redistribute those juices and help it retain its juice as you're done. So we have the carrots, we have the meat. I mean, this is, to me, this is honestly like the meal. If I'm gonna name a meal growing up that mom loved and made a lot, it was pot roast, because she loves cooked carrots. She loves a roast like this, and it really is. It's just absolutely perfect. I love the end piece usually of a roast. I don't know why, but just so I don't have to cut it on camera, I'm gonna cut some for myself so it's easier to try. And what I love is how, I don't know, this has the ability just to kind of, who isn't gonna love this? Put some of that wonderful gravy on it, and you're ready to go. Let's try some of the meat. I wish I could describe to you how the meat is falling apart in my mouth. Like a fork will cut it. Carrot is one of my favorites too. Okay, what I love, the sweetness of the carrots really comes through. And they pick up those wonderful juices and the sauce, and they're cooked perfectly. They are not overcooked, they are not mushy. Same with the potatoes. When you cut through, look at that. Oh, they retain some of that look at that beautiful potato. Creamy, soft, but not mushy. Exactly what you want. This is, to me, the best, it's the best comforting meal you can have, and it really does go together really quickly, and it just takes time to slowly cook, to really melt out those fats and really tenderize the meat in the oven. And that's the best part. You get to smell it, you get to anticipate it, be excited. If you're having people over, make this. If you just want to have something for your family or yourself, make this. This is best for both components. It can work in an kind of a elevated way and just a weeknight way. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you have some pot roast, because you need it and you deserve it. So have a delicious meal, share this recipe around, because when you share these videos, it helps me immensely, but it helps everyone see this is doable. If I can do it, you can do it. We can all do it and enjoy some good food. So check my website, wiseguide.com, for tips, for tricks, for this recipe and all my other recipes. You can print them off. Until next time, have something delicious like this humble but perfectly amazing pot roast. I'm gonna just put this back on here, because to me, you should serve it together and enjoy it.